Right. Everyone else gets angry about things all the time in wrestling, including what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to be the guy that gets mad. Now, obviously, you're not wrong. You're not right. You're allowed to have your opinion. So I lasted all of 8 seconds before I reverted back to Simon Miller's speak. But here is the deal. Last night on AEW Dynamite, Ricochet came out. Dare I say it, he showed a little bit more character than he has done in a while. Then after I'd done the review for What Culture Ups and Downs, make sure you subscribe to them, subscribe to me as well. I went on that there old internet, and my gosh, I don't want to say that some people were overreacting, even if you didn't like it, which again is totally cool. You have to believe in your own beliefs, a stupid thing to say. But dare I say it, people need to calm it down just a little bit, because ultimately it's just wrestling. But here is the deal. So many people point their finger at AEW and go, oh, there's no stories. I mean, this Ricochet, we'll take Ricochet. He's just a guy that's really good at doing the in-ring stuff, but he has nothing else to him. So over the last few weeks, and AEW has been patient with this, I'll show you evidence if we need to get into it, all of a sudden Rick has becoming a little bit more of a dickhead. Dare I say, especially in that match with Commander, I believe it was. No, with Brody King, sorry. All of a sudden, it was like, well, he's using turnbuckles and he's kind of walking with a bit of a strut. And during his promos, he's doing that ha-ha thing where it kind of sounds like a bird. This guy is a little bit troubling. Now, I actually quite liked it because I like it when people go a little bit nuts in pro wrestling. But on this week's episode of Dynamite, he comes out, and once again, he's like, man, I'm so great, I'm doing so well in the C2, and I'm going to whoop Will Ospreay's butt. And he kind of throws niceness, I guess for lack of a better term, at the Hurt Syndicate. I almost called them the Hurt Business, don't tell anyone. And out they come. Bobby Lashley strangles him, which is a perfectly normal thing to do. They rip up the business card, they give him to Ricochet and say, we don't like you because you're kissing butt, and that's not what we're all about. And Ricochet ran away. Now, I think it must be this bit where people are like, this is disgusting. How dare you do this mere days before he takes on Will Ospreay? But otherwise, what would we have gotten, right? Will Ospreay versus Ricochet is a match I'm always going to go out of my way to see. As soon as AEW said it's going to be on this week's episode of Collision, I'm like, well, I'm going to watch Collision. And that's a bit of a false truth because I'm going to watch Collision anyway. I watch all the shows because I'm a massive nerd. But still, it was more like, well, I'll try and get to it earlier than maybe I would have done otherwise because it's a feud, it's a match, it's a program, it's two people squaring off against each other. It meant the world to me 8 years ago, whenever the flub it was, and I'm always going to hold on to those memories. So even if this match isn't as good as some of their other ones, I actually don't care because them just being back in the ring again is enough for me. You can say it's good, you can say that bad. It doesn't actually make a difference. But it doesn't all of a sudden make me think that Ricochet is a massive loser geek for two very specific reasons. The first one is that he's made it clear he is a bit of a penis, right? There was another segment we did later on when Renee Paquette was interviewing him, and Swerve came up and they called him Trevor. It was actually quite a good use of a real name because Swerve's big point was, well, surprise, surprise. Now you are getting more mic time. You are having the spotlight shine you a bit more. And the real you, quote unquote, was coming out. And we all know the real you is a bit of a goober. And then Ricochet instantly goes, oh, you're just bitter because you didn't win the C2. And I did. Really good, right? Really good stuff. Didn't appreciate Swerve and Prince Nana making a bald joke, but listen, Swerve is a brilliant professional wrestler, so I'll let him off. But it did sting, just so you know, Mr. Strickland. There's no need to go after the bald guys. But once again, Ricochet did his ha-ha. He just legged it. Now, let's say he had have challenged the Hurt Syndicate, right? What would have happened? He would have been beaten up. So technically what he did was a smart thing to do. Look what happened to Danny Garcia and Mark Briscoe later on. Daniel Garcia was like, I've done the maths. I was like, well, no, you haven't because you attacked 3-on-2, which isn't that much better than 3-on-1. But the part two to all of this, I don't want to be that guy, and I apologize for saying this, but it's just a wrestling slang term that's in my brain. I think this is one where you have to let it play out. Just because Bobby Lashley gave him a bit of a strangle and we ripped up a business card does not mean that Ricochet is not going to join the Hurt Syndicate. And I would hazard a guess that Will Ospreay may be losing again at the weekend because the Hurt Syndicate come out and they actually help. The Hurt Syndicate are gold, man. Everyone's going to cheer them regardless because they're too cool. It doesn't even matter who they go after. Maybe Will Ospreay is the exception because he is so damn popular in AEW. But if you've decided to do that, this is a much better version of Ricochet to put in that group than the Ricochet we did have. I had no problem with the Ricochet that we did have. He's a very, 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 very good worker, but that's why it works even more because it's almost like a Kurt Angle situation. What I mean by that is Kurt Angle could be the biggest moron and funny guy outside of the ring, or I guess not take himself too seriously, because you knew when we got in the ring he was going to be super serious, but also he was an Olympic gold medalist. And most people, especially the AEW audience, know what Ricochet brings to the table, right? We get it. So if we're going to add in the extra secret sauce, We don't need another tough guy. I'm so sick of tough guys in wrestling, because if everybody's a tough guy, nobody's a tough guy. So if he can lean into this, which he's also doing on social media, I find it very entertaining. And he does get into the Hurt Syndicate. Even if he doesn't, let's say he doesn't get into the Hurt Syndicate, right? We'll throw my fantasy booking out the window. Him being this guy and probably winning matches in dubious ways after being a massive prick is way better than Ricochet just flipping, dipping around the ring and getting the 1, 2, 3. We've seen that and he's great at it, but I think we need to evolve as characters. And if he does join the group, he can be that extra fourth person. Because Shelton Benjamin, absolute badass. I love him. See, these are the guys you want to be tough because it works within the boundaries they've set for themselves. But yeah, Shelton Benjamin, absolutely awesome. Almost having a renaissance in his career because never really got his due, and finally he's getting his due. Bobby Lashley, former world champion. Everyone buys him as the real deal, so there's no problem there. And MVP is the talker of the group, and again, just has a way about him. He's a great hire for any roster. So Ricochet comes in there as almost the almost the bully, almost the moron, and you have to make it work, obviously, with the synergy, terrible word, that they all have. But I think there is so much more you can do with that than Ricochet versus Will. We've seen Ricochet versus Will Ospreay. So give me the goofy idiot Ricochet who could also still, like I say, fly around the ring, taking on the Will Ospreay, who also has his own story because he just got beat by Darby Allin, and he talked about it on Collision, I believe. Sometimes the shows blur into one for me, where Darby was like, why aren't you helping out with the Moxley situation? And Ospreay said, dude, I got to start winning, man. I've lost in the last 2 pay-per-views. I ain't doing great in the Continental Classic. Let me win that tournament. I'll find my Moxie, and then I can, ironically, come and help you take on John Moxley. So it's Moxie to Moxley. But now I think we're going to actually do a story where Will Ospreay isn't going to even get to the finals of the tournament. And if we do that, I think it will be great. I understand that I look at wrestling in a very different way than most, so I could be a problem here. I'm happy to hold my hands up, and if you're getting mad, totally get it. Go nuts in the comments. It doesn't matter to me if you win or lose, as long as you're portrayed in a certain way. And if I am told the story, wow, Will Ospreay is one of the greatest wrestlers in the world, which you can see when he does wrestle. That Darby Allin match is a late contender for a match of the year. But when you already have that information in your brain, then because we know what wrestling is, he hasn't actually lost. And of course, if you're trying to build a star, wins are really important. Otherwise, how are the fans ever going to buy into it? And of course, if you have a more casual fan group, then it does become massively important. So it's a very finite line we're walking here. But we understand that Will Ospreay is a generational talent. So if all of a sudden coming out of the C2, he does have this cool narrative where it's like, oh man, you didn't do very well in that at all. Once again, I think there's more you can do with that as a ongoing story television program than Will Ospreay won the Continental Championship or whatever. Actually, I would like the finals, if it works, to be Okada versus Kyle Fletcher, because that's another thing you could do. If Okada wins this tournament after being maybe somewhat sidelined recently, like he hasn't been making a big hoo-ha-ha, been having great matches. But if Kyle Fletcher gets to the final, that's good for him and everything he's done over the last few months. And if Okada wins it again once more when we move into 2025, and apparently Kenny Omega on the cusp of coming back, maybe you can launch right into that feud. You make sure it's the Kenny Omega from New Japan, terrible terminology, but you know what I mean. You make sure it's the Okada from New Japan, and then look what we've done. We've stacked the deck, which is what AEW should be doing right now to right some of the issues that they are having. So I like piece of trash Ricochet, man. I am totally into this. It doesn't make me think he has a bigger or a worse chance against Will Ospreay. I'm not going to think he's a bigger or worse loser, figuratively speaking, if he doesn't pick up that win. And even if the Hurt Syndicate don't take him on, if he is going to be featured in segments going forward, this is going to benefit him far more than just being the Ricochet of old. There's nothing wrong with the Ricochet of old, but again, this is the Ricochet in AEW, so we want to add new bells to the Christmas tree to keep it in the holiday season. So I was genuinely surprised. I'm so worried. I don't know if ups and downs is up or not yet, but people are going to get so mad at me. But I compared it to, and it's a very old reference now, but when Britt Baker was on the boat and she cut that heel promo on Tony Schiavone, when she was all like, oh man, you're a Starbucks barista. I remember being like, man, there's something to this. I found it quite funny. And I said, I think if we continue to go in this direction, Britt Baker could become the star she actually went on to doing. Now, it doesn't make me a wrestling savant. It was just something I felt in my tum-tum. And I remember then people being like, you don't know what you're talking about, you bald idiot. And admittedly, 95% of the time I don't. This is one of my good home runs that comes out of nowhere. But given that I did get the same gut instinct for this, I'm going to rely on evidence that I have got from the past. And I think this is the way to make Ricochet stand out. So maybe this is what was always missing. It wasn't the fact that, he wasn't cutting promos that people liked, or I can't remember what the other thing people said was. He wasn't being used high enough on the card. He just needed a different portrayal, a different side to him, an extra edge, not Adam Copeland, but he could be coming back soon, as teased by FTR on AEW Dynamite. And if it doesn't work, I'd much rather companies and promotions took risks than just didn't bother. Otherwise, why have weekly television? It'd be so dull because we would just do the same thing over and over again. So I know this intrigues me about Dynamite and AEW and makes me want to see what is coming next. And sort of, again, again, I was going to repeat myself, but it keeps coming back to my brain. We've seen Will Ospreay versus Ricochet. We've seen it. We saw it like a month ago or whenever it was when they went to the draw, and that's actually something that Ricochet dropped in there as well. I don't want to draw again. And he said it very matter-of-factly, much like Steve Austin did. Look at me being a nerd. At WrestleMania 17, I have to win that title by hook or by crook, and he teams up with the devil himself. Maybe Ricochet has joined the Hurt Syndicate, and this is them just causing a ruse, and I get it. Simon, why would they cause a ruse? The answer is wrestling, right? I'm sorry, that's not specific to this angle at AEW. Wrestlers do it all the time. Sometimes a wrestler comes out to save someone, but they're actually saving someone else, and they joke about it first. I'm going to get you. No, I'm not. I'm going over there because it's drama, and it's pantomime, and it's absolutely brilliant. So I thought this was the best episode of Dynamite in ages. It felt like AEW, which is a dumb thing to say. Bringing it back into small arenas is absolutely the right idea because the atmosphere was on fire, and that just makes the product feel more exciting. Like I say, that Darby versus Will Ospreay match is something that everyone should go out to see. I know, it's just a flippy bit with no selling. That's cool. Don't watch it. It's not for you. But if you are into it, you should see it. And all the other C2 matches have been awesome as well. And I admit I'm not massively into the world title stuff. You know, the Hangman stuff, the John Moxley, the Jay White, and Orange Cassidy. I like them all as characters, but I kind of feel like the Death Rider storyline hasn't hit in maybe the way we were expecting, but it's still fine. Mostly. I wouldn't call it bad. I would just call it a bit wishy-washy. And again, that four-way at the pay-per-view will be good. And the upside to it is I thought the MJF Adam Cole stuff finally feels like a proper feud. You do have to ignore a lot. I'm not saying it hasn't been a bumpy ride to get here. It's been super bumpy, but having MJF on the show, I'm a big fan of MJF promos. We've talked about this before. I know some people feel like he just does the same thing over and over again. I don't feel that way, but I thought the charity thing was very funny. The Photoshop image of Adam Cole was ridiculous. And of course, Adam Cole was the smart baby face, pre-recorded video, whoops MJF's butt from behind. And if Matt Taven and Mike Bennett aren't going heel, that's the most absurd thing I've ever seen. But this just felt nice and simple. Give me the match that I want and just make it all make sense while also ignoring 12 months of storyline, which wasn't their fault, really. You can't account for those kind of injuries, which is why, whether people want to like it or not, at least for a short while, I'm going to give Adam Cole the benefit of the doubt because he has another person's bone in his foot. Wrestling is so hard as it is, right? I am blessed to wrestle and have many opportunities, and sometimes like, oh my gosh, that was really difficult. He's doing it with another man's bone in his foot, which makes him the greatest wrestler alive as far as I am concerned. So yeah, it was a super fun show. I really like that Mercedes Moné Anna Jay match too, because again, Anna Jay is now becoming what's the word I'm even looking for? Which is coming into her own after putting in the time. And that's always cool to see. And I actually think the Christian Cage Hook stuff has been very, very good because we just kept it simple. It evolves every single week. It's easy to follow. You'd have to assume that Hook beats Nick Wayne, that he can beat Christian or Christian can beat him. That's fine. As long as you plan the win back for down the line. I've got no problem with that at all. And some of the wins and losses we're getting in the C2 are now sort of paying off, and the people you didn't think were going to win are getting the win. Shelton Benjamin versus the Beast Mortis 2. Shelton Benjamin, my favorite person ever. He's so damn good. And I love to see him in this spot. So, yeah, I think you're wrong about Ricochet. But of course, by that same vantage point, if you disagree with me, I am the wrong one. But it sucks to be you because I'm the one with a small platform. That's a terrible thing to say. I didn't mean it, and I take it back. But I am laying my fork in the sand. That's not a thing. But I'm drawing my battle lines. I am on the side of you damn right for asshole dick prick Ricochet. I think it's going to work out really well. And I think hopefully in 6 months to a year's time, we can look back and go, that's the reason he jumped to AEW, because he wanted to get more of that in there. And again, he does go off on social media sometimes, which he's more than allowed to do. And if you can merge these two, I think it'd be onto something, but we'll see. But it has made me very excited about 2025 because there are some extra elements coming with Max 2. Keep it in the small arenas, regrow it from there, keep the atmosphere up. I'm a happy man. Good stuff. Now, of course, you need to disagree with me, and you can do that in the comments below. Just make up a bunch of stuff. Everyone does that anyway. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Click the video on the screen, which is me writing down my best women of 2024. Please ignore that noise. It's this new fridge that I've got. Thank you to Grill of Mind, which does tie in grillermind.com/Simon. Use code Simon to get 10% off. Also, right now, I'm doing instant cameos. Again, just search for my name, which means as long as I'm around, I will reply in 60 minutes and get you a video. But you have normal ones with deadlines as well. Christmas cameos are through the roof in 2025, so that's been fun. Otherwise, Simon Miller 316 on all social media, prowrestlingtees.com/Simon Miller if you want a t-shirt for Christmas. That's always nice. A few have been sold too. Always warms my heart. But make sure you have a terrific holiday season, my friends, and I'll talk to you on the next one.